On Philosophy by John Rowe. One is not responsible for their first thoughts, but one is responsible for their second thoughts. Anonymous. It was jarring to realize how many preconceived notions I had about the nature of philosophy as a whole, and the many different philosophers. And quickly my ideas about what I had thought I knew about philosophy began to fall away in the class. Dogma was the first concept I came to understand in this class. The notion of blind faith, indisputable, incontrovertible facts, had me questioning my own fervent attachments to beliefs I had long stood behind. How many beliefs about the nature of the world, humanity, morality, God were things I had inherited and barely questioned? Or if I had questioned them, had I ever defended them? As we started into class, it became evident that I had a lot of dogmatic beliefs because I'd never examined the internal logic behind them. The work of learning about fallacies further helped me break apart the molds of my dogmatic thinking, as simple things like circular reasoning, reductio ad absurdum, begging the question, toppled easily the mighty structures of thought I had built. While it was in many ways frustrating to realize so much of what I believed was illogical, even irrational, it was also incredibly freeing. No longer being stymied by an adherence to outdated beliefs or stuck in arguments defending illogical positions. It was refreshing and scary to suddenly feel like learning for the first time was a reality. The unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates. The Socratic problem, in an odd way, became something I first began to wrestle with in my own mind. Not about Socrates per se, but who was I? And starting with the godfather of Western philosophy was a good place to begin. Plato's Apology was the first bit of true philosophy I read, and his manner of speech, rooting out contradictions in speech and belief, was the first cornerstone of what I learned from him. The number one rule of good thinking, law of non-contradiction. Bad thinking is holding on to contradictions internally, and seeking out contradictions in opposing beliefs in my own life helped clear up space for broader, more complex strokes in thinking. Je pense, donc je suis. René Descartes. I first heard Bugs Bunny use, I think, therefore I am. Pretty sure he dropped an anvil on Daffy Duck after that. That phrase has rattled around in my conscience, but finally understanding the context of its creation and use, it was mind-blowing. Descartes' use of first-person philosophy is, in my opinion, one of the single most insightful advancements in the construction of a philosophical argument of all time. We often ask the question, but what can philosophy do for me? I think the way Descartes chose to structure his use of reasoning and logic in such a way as to posit it as the reader making little leaps from one concept to another in thinking is utter brilliance, as it allowed us to do that, to make that leap of what can philosophy do for me. That he would then use that structure to walk back 1,000 years of philosophy, intentions of proving the existence of God, but simultaneously questioning everyone who came before him in such a deft manner speaks to the incalculable level of his genius. While I personally take issue with the rest of the philosophy beyond the cogito, specifically the motive behind his logic, inasmuch as I believe it informed the weak structure of his ontological argument, the simple but deftly powerful thought of "I think, therefore I am" has enraptured me completely, and forms the second of the cornerstones of my own philosophy. That the mind is not the body, and we exist as two separate yet intertwined states, while not entirely perfectly sound logic, still has such merit. It warrants continued examination because its ramifications on morality and reality are profound. As Descartes had his dualism, so do I have my own thoughts about it, objective reality versus subjective reality. But before I can get all there, we have it all right there now, is that I exist. Be a philosopher, but amid all your philosophy, be still a man. David Hume. Hume's literal devastation of reason and knowledge was not unlike Caesar crossing the Rubicon. From that moment forward, we have never, ever been able to go back. And from him, I learned a great deal of peace. Demonstrative reasoning and probable reasoning is both fundamentally inadequate. What can any of us hope to know if tomorrow cannot be known? The tailspin he must have sent the philosophers of his day and ought to have been maddening. I read his work and felt excitement like nothing I'd ever felt before. I had little notions about what I could know, things based on knowledge, tradition, culture, and majority rule, but David validated the spirit of my own ideas in a far more concise and clear way than I ever hoped I could elocute. I'm sure I must be an odd duck to get so elated at the thought of everything I could have ever hoped to know in this world being unverifiably true, but again, it was just another moment of letting go of past beliefs, freedom from so much dogma. If it couldn't be proven true, it's illogical to maintain belief in it as truth. Descartes' cogito holds up in the light of this, though, and outside of what we could purport as knowledge with science or religion, I cannot not think, And as I choose not to, and I can choose not to exist, but I cannot understand not existing without existing, so I must exist. Death does not concern us, for as we are here, death is not near us, and when death comes, we are no longer here. Epicurus. We are or we aren't. We cannot be both. Live your life as though every act were to become a universal law. Immanuel Kant. Kant features heavily in a favorite TV show of mine, The Good Place. Chidi Anagonye, one of the main characters, is a black male philosopher of ethics who, in the afterlife, bound by his ethical duty established by Immanuel Kant, helps a woman named Eleanor Shellstrap learn to become a good person in order to secure her spot in the good place. Fitting that the etymology of his name literally means God is with us, Kant's defense of reason and morality against Hume's savage decimation of knowledge before him is just as monumentally important. When I was 5 years old, I wrote on a piece of paper I ripped from my only sister's school notebooks, what does it mean to be a good person? I have pondered that question every day of my life since then. I mean it. That paper has been taped to every bathroom mirror in every home and every apartment I've ever lived in. And when it hasn't been taped to, it resides folded up neatly into an oblivion into whatever current wallet I'm carrying around. If all knowledge cannot be proven, the only thing I can know is with any assuredness is that I exist. What then do I do with my life? That I have it. Science, math, politics are still here. What then is the purpose? My purpose. The categorical imperative is the third cornerstone of my own personal philosophy, the maxim to life. Philip Satin lakes on what we owe to each other. There is a purpose, and it is us to each other. The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. Karl Marx. It wasn't enough to learn and adopt the categorical imperative in my life. Reading about Marx and his fervor for change, being a social voice for the poor and the abused minorities, further developed my own thoughts about the world. Detailing the struggle of the proletariat, the bourgeoisie, and the inherent instability of capitalism, I'd heard the term economic philosophy before, but never understood it. And it's here I think my work is going to begin. Standing on the shoulders of giants, I know what to do. Be a revolutionary voice for change. We can do better. We have it in us, greatness. All a revolution needs is a leader. There is much to wonder about, and thankful to philosophy, that desire to never stop wondering burns bright in me. Forward unto dawn. I'm excited about the future.